In this movie, we're going to look at Booleans. A Boolean is a programming type that can either be true or false. That's it, one of those two values. And true is not the string true or even the number 1. It's just simply the value true. Booleans are very useful in programming because we can use them when performing tests. For example, in the last movie, we used the inArray function to test whether an integer was inside of an array. The result was that the test was a Boolean. True if the integer was present, false if it was not. Let's start by creating ourselves a new workspace for this. I'll open up basic.html. We'll do save as. We're going to call this Booleans. Notice how that's spelled Booleans. And I'll also call it Booleans here. And let's create our PHP tags. Now, a Boolean is simply the value true or the value false. Notice that there are no quotes around that. It's not a string. So we could have, for example, result1 equals true. And then down here we'll have result2 equals false. Now all we're doing is assigning a Boolean to a variable. We can assign it just like we do anything else. And we can take a look at what these values look like when we echo them back. I'll just save that, result1 and result2 being echoed. So we'll just go to our browser, and instead of array functions, let's now load up booleans.php. Notice that result1 comes back and says 1, result2 doesn't have anything. We've seen this before. 1 is what happens when PHP converts a Boolean true into a string. It turns it into 1. When it's converting a Boolean false into a string, it has nothing. It outputs absolutely nothing. Not a 0, but actually no string at all. Now we can assure ourselves that result2 is in fact a Boolean by calling another function here called is_bool. That will tell us whether or not something is a Boolean. It's just like we had is numeric earlier, is float. Well, we have is bool to find out if something is a Boolean. And what is it going to return to us? A Boolean. But the difference is that if result2 is a Boolean, it's going to return true, which we'll be able to see, because that'll come back as being a 1. Now notice that I have true and false all lowercase here. In PHP, you'll often see it written all uppercase, true and false, or you'll see it lowercase. And you can waste a lot of time arguing with people about the right way to do it in PHP. Everyone has their belief about whether they should be uppercase or lowercase, but in truth, in PHP they're case insensitive, and you can use whichever one you prefer. They're absolutely equal. I prefer to use the lowercase version. Now where Booleans are going to be most useful to us is when we're working with conditionals, which we haven't seen yet. But the basic idea is that in our code we want to say, well, if one thing is true, then do this bit of code. If something else is true, then do this other bit of code. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of conditionals. Even though we're not quite ready to really dive into them yet, I'll go ahead and give you a preview. Let's say that we have number equal to 3.14, and we're going to write an if statement. Don't worry too much about the format of the if statement. We'll be covering this later. But I'm going to check to see whether number is a float, right? We saw that is float earlier, and it returns a Boolean as a result. So if it returns true, then echo it is a float. There we go. Let's just try that out. And there it is. You see that it is a float. And if we change it so that it's not a float, make it a 3, we reload the page, you'll see that it doesn't execute that code. So that's where Booleans become really useful, is when we're working with conditionals. And we're going to do a lot of that when we're programming. So we'll see more of that when we come to the conditional section. For now, just make sure that you understand the basics of what a Boolean is, and that a Boolean is not a string or an integer. It is its own type, and it's always either true or false.